Central Australia, the outback. To Europeans, it's known as Ayers Rock. To the Aboriginal people, it's called Uluru. A wild place full of myth and legend, one that plays an important part in their dream time.
The dingo is associated with Uluru, and there's a song cycle concerning the dingo that goes right through even into Alice Springs, where there's a rock in Alice Springs that contains the spirit of the dingo spirit. Near Uluru, there is a whole set of rocks there that are the dingo pups, which are like the souls of people in many ways, and they're in this rock that's near Uluru.
Ayers Rock is in the Northern Territory, close to the border with South Australia. All kinds of stories are centered around this mythical place, but none like this. Australia's dingoes were on trial, and so was this woman, Lindy Chamberlain, the mother of a baby called Azaria.
I got to admit, when I looked up and saw that one in the cage and it was staring straight down, it gave me the creeps.
On August 17th, 1980, Lindy and her husband Michael were on a camping holiday with their 3 children at Ayers Rock. 9-year-old Reagan and 6-week-old baby Azaria were asleep in the Chamberlain's tent, just 20 meters from where Lindy and Michael were cooking on a campsite barbecue.
The tent was pitched here, just a little 4-man tent. The picnic table here, the campfire barbecue there. Now Regan was sleeping here, and Azaria's carry basket was across sideways with her head here.
Azaria cried out. Lindy went back to see what was wrong. What she saw was every mother's nightmare. Her child was being taken.
The dingo was just in the process of coming out of the tent here, and I could see just the upper part of the dingo's head. I could see her blankets. There were some little bits of blood around the door.
No trace of the dingo or Azaria was found, despite an intensive search. An inquest was held. Evidence in support of Lindy's story filled the newspapers, but there was just as much speculation that a dingo couldn't have taken Azaria, and that Lindy had murdered her daughter. In February 1981, the Northern Territory coroner concluded that the evidence was sufficient to indicate that a dingo had taken Azaria. But the judgment did nothing to solve the mystery. Could Australia's wild dog have done such a thing? If it wasn't a dingo, who or what had taken baby Azaria? The dingo is truly a wild dog, difficult to tame, and not suitable as a family pet, and that is fully equipped for a tough life in the vast wilderness areas of Australia.
And everything about them is attuned to being extremely sensitive. You know, their ears are like little radar screens to pick up sounds. Their nostrils are large to pick up any scent. They'll even lick the air to pick up scent. They can't be desensitized because that's the way they're made.
Bernice Walters has been studying dingoes for over 30 years and now runs a dingo sanctuary in New South Wales. Bernice wrapped 5 kilograms of meat and bone in a wool shawl and watched several of her dingoes as they tried to run off with it.
Well, the early experiments were on the lifting and carrying capacity of dingoes, and he picked it up from the point of balance and carried it about perhaps 6-10 yards, then put it down, and none of them were able to carry it more than that short distance.
But Lindy's story had put dingoes under increasing scrutiny. Had they attacked before? In June 1980, Max and Phyllis Cranwell took time off from their dairy farm near Melbourne and traveled to Ayers Rock with their 2 daughters, Melissa, aged 7, and Amanda, aged 3. They stayed at the same camping ground where only 2 months later, Azaria's tragedy was to be played out.
We just heard Amanda make some sort of a noise, and because we were setting up the caravan, we just went out and walked around the car, and she was just laying on the ground with the dingo standing over her head, and the dog must have just grabbed her, and she's toppled out of the car. She had bites down the back of her neck, across her shoulders, in one ear, and a mark on the side of her face.
There have been other cases too, up to 50 according to some, either hushed up or long forgotten. They have led to claims of a cover-up, but in Aboriginal dream time, it's all been heard before.
When I was young, very young, we used to live in a place outside of town and camp, and we could hear dingoes howling in the night, and my parents were always warning us to stay close to camp because the dingoes would come and take us.
According to Lindy, very little was done to warn the tourists of the possible danger.
Although they were warning the big bus tours and groups that they had been having attacks, there was nothing at all telling the families coming in private cars they were not warning.
At the time, many felt that Lindy's dingo story was just too bizarre. In September 1981, the Northern Territory's chief minister ordered police to reopen the case. In February 1982, Lindy Chamberlain was charged with the murder of Azaria. After an 8-month trial, she was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. In 1986, there was a major development. Azaria's matinee jacket, bloodied, torn, and bearing what looked like teeth marks, was found near Ayers Rock. Crucial evidence which supported Lindy's account and implicated the dingo. Lindy was released from jail, and 6 years later, awarded $1.3 million in compensation for wrongful conviction. To this day, the controversy and mystery continue. A recent inquest into baby Azaria's death, the 5th investigation since that dreadful night in 1980, has returned an open verdict. No culprit, no body, and no dingo.
The dingo may be a unique creature, but it takes some doing to beat the exceptional sacred flesh-eating fish of Turkey. Their purpose is not to harm, but to help cure, and their origins date back to biblical times.
Your worst nightmare. No one can imagine what it's like to be taken by one of these monsters. The great white shark is one of nature's most feared carnivores. So are these. The Amazon's most infamous residents are also attracted by blood. These razor-toothed piranhas can reduce a mammal to its skeleton in a matter of minutes. But here's a flesh-eating fish of a different kind, one that devours human flesh to enhance rather than destroy life. For sufferers of painful skin complaints like psoriasis, the amazing Dr. Fish of Turkey are literally eating their ailments away. Animal X traveled to the small mountain village of Kermik in Turkey, home to these unique creatures that help to cure. Psoriasis is a skin disorder affecting as many as 1 in 40 people. Psoriasis manifests itself as swollen skin lesions covered in white scales. For victims, the pain is more than skin deep. Aside from a constant raging itch, sufferers also must deal with the emotional pain caused by physical disfiguration. Various treatments are available, but none has proved successful. Locals call them Dr. Fish because of their amazing ability to heal. Ranging from 2 to 9 centimeters in length, the fish thrive in warm water. Incredibly, there are 3 types of Dr. Fish which work together to alleviate the symptoms of psoriasis. They're called strikers, jabbers, and lickers according to their unique talents.
Well, the Dr. Fish appear to have a sort of behaviour that a lot of other fishes may have, and that's called a cleaning mutualism. Now, mutualism involves an interaction between 2 organisms where both get some sort of benefit. And in the case of the doctorfish, I'd imagine the benefit is in all that extra food in the form of human flesh available. And in the case of the humans, they're obviously getting some sort of therapeutic benefit.
The strikers attack the hard, flaky skin to expose the inflamed area. Next, the jabbers draw blood from the wound. Finally, the lickers wrap up the procedure by secreting saliva to heal the wound. They only attack the diseased areas, and in a strange twist that continues to mystify the medics, leave the healthy skin unscathed.
I don't believe that a cure for psoriasis exists, but I think the phenomenon of the doctorfish is interesting in that it seems to alleviate some sufferers with psoriasis. The doctorfish would be the most unusual treatment that I've heard of for psoriasis to date.
Patients of the doctorfish consider them a miracle, a heavenly healing force of mystical powers. This man has had the disease for 14 years. He's been here for 5 days and says so far all's going well. And this man says he's suffered from psoriasis for 4 years. It covered both his hands and the soles of his feet. At times he was unable to walk. Since ancient times, fish that live in such springs have been considered sacred by Muslims and Jews alike. According to Turkish mythology, while Abraham was resting at the town of Ur on his way to the Promised Land, he was captured by locals and thrown onto a funeral pyre. But then, in an act of divine intervention, God created 2 pools of water and used them to extinguish the fire, thus saving Abraham. Even now, it's forbidden for locals to catch or eat the fish from these pools. Despite such incredible results, science is still at a loss to explain the mysterious workings of the doctorfish. But there's a good chance these hot springs will become the new mecca for psoriasis sufferers everywhere.
From devoted followers of flesh-eating fish to those dedicated to finding one of the world's greatest legends. After the break, Animal X goes on the hunt for Bigfoot, with some unexplained encounters along the way.
Something tripped over the corner of my tent and sent the whole tent rocking.
There's sounds that I've never heard before.
Welcome back to Animal X. Hundreds of people claim to have seen it. Some even have pictures they believe offer proof that it's out there. The legend of Bigfoot is world famous. We met up with those determined to show that it's more than just a myth, that Sasquatch is alive and well and living in North America.
For more than a century, reports of a creature, half man, half ape, living in North America's wilderness have absorbed adventurers. But Bigfoot, or the Sasquatch as the Indians call it, has remained elusive. The best images that remain are artists' impressions. But in a new expedition to separate fact from fiction, a well-equipped team of experts has recorded a series of chilling experiences in one of the most remote parts of the United States. They say the animal they encountered could only have been one thing.
And we found what we interpreted to be Sasquatch tracks and other evidence, calls and also visitations at night, having food stolen, things like that. Definitely not bear.
Animal X obtained exclusive high-8 video from the team's visit to Northern California and their search for the Bigfoot in the Siskiyou Mountains. After 2 days of trekking, cryptozoologist Richard Greenwell, his son Darwin, primatologist Jeffrey Meldrum and their guide Mark Slack are deep in the rugged Californian wilderness. They stumble upon tracks that fit the description of Bigfoot.
We've got compression of the sediment all the way back to here, and this rock's been dislodged, so we know that occurred all the way back this far. So what we have is we've got something that is roughly in the neighborhood of 12 inches in there.
Throw it across the front end.
The tracks are not easily distinguishable, but the evidence of toes and a human-shaped foot, as well as the number of prints, give the team reason to rule out bears.
There are toes visible. So that would be too coincidental for a bear to, bear's hind foot to register on the foot. Repeatedly. I'm perfectly comfortable concluding that what we see here are Sasquatch.
Well, you're the team primatologist. Okay.
But the group isn't just hoping to bump into a Sasquatch. They're aiming to get Bigfoot to come to them. They're armed with infrared sensors, cameras, as well as stereo equipment. From a car stereo system, recorded Bigfoot calls are broadcast from the mountaintops. The reclusive Sasquatch is believed to communicate using this eerie howl.
A little forward more, maybe back a little more forward.
It's now a matter of waiting for the calls to bring out the hairy primates.
Within about 5 minutes of our getting back to camp, it was activated by something that was at least 5 feet tall. We're not sure what.
Jeff Meldrum is looking for clues. Perhaps a bear standing on its hind legs or the antler of a deer has triggered the device.
And that could have been from last night before the rain.
Yeah.
With no sign of Sasquatch in the area, Jeff and Mark head off deeper into the remote countryside in pursuit of Bigfoot. The evidence they uncover leaves them convinced the Sasquatch is out there. A series of footprints 16 inches long attracts their attention. Then something very odd happens.
We're sitting there talking for some time when suddenly there was a crash behind us. Something had been thrown.
Had a Sasquatch been trying to frighten the two men out of its territory? During their time in the remote wilderness, Richard and Mark begin to feel that they're the ones under surveillance.
Something tripped over the corner of my tent and sent the whole tent rocking.
There's sounds that I've never heard before in all the years of guiding.
At night, whistles and rappings go on around their tents. Howls can be heard in the distance. Mark's backpack is raided, and 3 sets of tracks are discovered that don't fit the description of a bear.
So, your conclusion is that it's Bigfoot?
Yeah, well, that was by process of elimination. That's the only reasonable alternative explanation.
After 3 weeks in the wilderness, the hunters become the hunted, at base camp as well. Sounds outside the tents give everyone the distinct impression that they'd been visited by a Sasquatch, perhaps even more than one.
Sort of a sweeping sound and what seemed to be 2 very brisk footsteps, but they were very light, padded footsteps, very distinct.
The encounters take place out of the range of nightscope cameras or after team members have left the observation hide. Yet the team members finish their mission with the same conclusion.
If Sasquatches don't exist, we've got something else.
Bigfoot has been reported all over the North American continent. It's consistently described as between 7 and 8 foot tall, a massive hairy ape-like animal that walks on 2 feet. It's often said to give off a repugnant odor. In the Florida Everglades, Bigfoot is known as the skunk ape for just that reason. A spate of sightings has captured the public imagination. Fire Chief Vince Dewar was driving along a quiet stretch of road when he spotted something unusual lumbering across his path on 2 feet. He reached for his camera and leapt out of the car.
Hey!
Vince Dewar captured the mysterious creature as it disappeared into the dense bushland.
And if you look, see where he's at?
His photograph shows an upright animal. Could it be the elusive skunk ape?
I've seen nearest thing, anything to it would be a bear. You know, they're on all 4. When they move any distance, they go down on 4. This stayed upright, 2 legs, walking with a long stride, and, you know, around 6 foot high, thereabout.
The Florida Everglades play host to an array of beautiful and menacing animals. Many people are convinced the skunk ape is among them. 6 English visitors were out on a regular tour when they encountered an animal not on the usual program.
One of the two boys aboard the van said, "Bigfoot, Bigfoot." In the opposite side of the road, we saw this creature standing up alongside the bushes, and it looked like a huge gorilla.
The creature appeared once again before it disappeared into the bushes. Perhaps the summer infestation of mosquitoes had forced the skunk ape out of the bushland and into the open. A set of tracks near the roadside suggest it did.
Tracks.
Cryptozoologist Richard Greenwell was brought to Florida to investigate.
Looks like about almost 13, almost 14 inches.
The tracks are remarkably similar to the casts taken from another set of footprints found in the area 3 months earlier.
If this is hoaxed, then this probably is hoaxed too, or vice versa, because they're very similar. And if the one's authentic, then there's a good chance the other one's authentic.
The track's proximity to the road raises the possibility that they've been faked, but Richard Greenwell isn't prepared to dismiss them. Up to the 1840s, gorillas were regarded as African folklore. It wasn't until skulls were discovered by Europeans that they were given a legitimate place in the animal kingdom. Will Bigfoot be next?
I don't have any absolute proof. Nobody does. There's films, there's footprints, there's eyewitness reports, there's hairs. When you combine all of this, you build up a pretty strong case, just like you would in a court of law.
A possible explanation lies 300,000 years back in time. An 8-foot-tall primate called Gigantopithecus is believed to have roamed what's now China.
There was the Bering Land Bridge from Asia to North America up to about 11,000 years ago, which could have permitted, just like when Asians crossed that land bridge to become today's American Indians, possibly a large primate came over, that one, and remained in the forest here.
Many Americans have testified that something strange certainly lives in the forests. For them, the most logical explanation is Bigfoot.